The 2025 class for the Georgia Bulldog is looking real chunky right now.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Brian Gebhardt. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs have now wound down completely from the NBA and NHL. The sports stop sporting like we want them to this summer. FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And of course, our Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Guys, the Dogs did some good work last week, and we'll talk about it in Next Up. And there is a case to be made that it'll actually be good for the Dogs in Austin, Tuscaloosa, and Oxford this fall, just like it is in Athens. We'll go between the hedges to discuss. But first, let's talk about the Dogs doing damage once again on the recruiting trail. And I tell you, Jarvis, it's like the Dogs are getting commits left and right. In fact, there might be more after we record our show today at the rate they're going. But Monday, we found out UGA landed the number one rated 5-star edge in the class of 2025 from Warner Robins, Isaiah Gibson. They also snagged 4-star Langston Hughes O-lineman Dontrell Glover, who's rated as high as number 3 as an interior O-lineman in the country in the same class. So, JD, how huge is it for the Dogs to get more depth in the trenches on both sides of the ball?
You know what? I got to start with Isaiah Gibson first, because when you look at this dude and look at the way he plays, first of all, it's a perfect fit, right? Because he already plays in the odd front down there in Warner Robins, and the Demons, they put him in position to be successful, right? And he just absolutely just dominates cats. This dude got a 7'1" wingspan at 6'3", 260. Man, that is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah. You know, it's almost like when he comes off the ball, obviously he has a really good get off. When he puts his hands on guys, he controls that offensive lineman and mashes them too. He's not just trying to get around those guys. He's trying to, you know, I even saw him two gap a little bit, you know, and that's kind of like, you know, a fossil in today's world of football, right? You don't hear people talking about two gapping anymore. And he just has really solid technique, really good with his hands. So for Kirby to get a guy like this, you kind of understand the importance of getting guys who can put pressure on the quarterback, because we've been having so many conversations about Michael Williams, you know, go and get that in today, you know, about how he has to step up and prove that he can be a top 5 or top 10 pick in the NFL draft, because we know how important it is getting to the quarterback. As much as these teams are slanging the football around the yard, they need guys that can put pressure up front. As far as Walker goes, that dude is just mean. He's just a mean little summer gun. You know, that dude puts his hand, he's literally walking around with syrup. He's trying to get those pancakes, man. That guy he's an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah. Well, talking about Isaiah Gibson for a second, massive recruit. I mean, getting the number one edge in the class is huge from no matter where he is. But it's something I talk a lot about on here, and Kirby preaches a lot in terms of winning that in-state recruit. That's another one. Yes, Warner Robins is a known program. You know, like they've been playing good ball down there for years and years and years. So when you see number one edge in the state from a big power school like that in Warner Robins, and then him coming there, and he's the type of guy, like some of the things that Jarvis had mentioned, he's a guy who could come in and make some plays right away. Like he's going to be, you know, contributing and be in that rotation and be in that mix right away. And then you start talking about mixing him with Joseph Jonah-Ajayi and guys like that as you move forward into the coming years. And these defensive classes are now starting to stack up, because you look at the group from last year with the group that's coming in from this year, and it's like, okay, we might be headed back towards another historic defense. Yeah, and then you talk about, it's funny because Isaiah Gibson, he sort of was like the crown jewel this week, right? But when you talk about the interior lineman, number 3 overall in his spot, it's like, oh yeah, they got him too. He's third best at his position. He just plays on the other side of the ball. Like, yeah, this was the second story of the weekend. So it's pretty wild that, you know, these recruits continue to come in like this, and an offensive lineman that's highly rated is like, oh yeah, and that guy too. So,
which I find to be so interesting, Brian, because you're right. As I was looking around social media and just the buzz about getting Isaiah Gibson, I was thinking to myself, well, Georgia, that program prides itself as well on winning in the trenches from an O-line perspective as well. So Dontrell Glover, they should be really excited about him too, because this is a team that at times, when we talked about, and of course I'm going back a couple seasons, but when we talked about that vaunted defensive front and really that Dogs defense overall, you can't leave out that O-line, because the reason Stetson Bennett was able to do as much as he was able to do is because of the protection that he was able to get as well. So I think, like you said, that's going to prove to be a nice feather in the Dogs' cap down the road. It may have been kind of overshadowed last night by what happened with Isaiah Gibson, but I do believe that in the end, that's going to be something that's going to be a get that's going to be extremely beneficial for the Dogs as well. Now, 5-star D tackle Justice Terry. That's an interesting one, guys, because last week we kind of saw some photos and some things that were leaked out in social media with him and our guy, Malachi Starks, right? Other M. And then we find out a couple days later that Terry decommitted from USC. Now, like we said, he's been lobbied heavily to change his commitment to Georgia. So when you think about that, Brian, you see the pictures out there on social media, and then all of a sudden, a couple days later, you hear Terry is decommitted. What do you think the odds are that the Dogs will actually be able to get that one more big commit for the class of 2025 and Justice Terry?
There's so much going on the last year or two with Kirby and Lincoln Riley and USC and these defensive recruits and specifically defensive linemen. Like, I wonder how Bear Alexander fits into this whole thing, just in terms of any communication amongst the players as well. It's hard to tell, because it almost seems like he's opened up his recruitment completely again.
Yes.
You would think that it would be, all right, this guy's coming to Georgia, but I think it's still, all right, what else can anybody else get me? Because it's all the other schools that are right there for him. So he might be doing one last ditch effort of, okay, who else we got? What else are we paying for? What else are you guys going to provide and bring to me? Ultimately, I'll be optimistic and say that it winds up happening, but it is interesting how the decommitment from US. It's going to be crazy if Kirby does this and is able to pull this off.
True.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about this, right? Because I'm really starting to believe that Kirby Smart is probably the pettiest coach we probably ever will see at the University of Georgia, right? Or in the SEC or in the country, right? Or that matter. Because like Brian mentioned, like you talk about, Bear Alexander going up there and then, not do and basically disappearing, when he was like a guy that was going to have a lot of promise, here down in Georgia. And it goes to show, like, it's an easy sell. If I'm Kirby, I'm saying, hey man, look at those defenses up there. Look at what they've been doing or haven't been doing. Like those defenses are probably going to get Lincoln Riley fired if you don't get it situated, right? If you don't get that thing fixed somehow. So yeah, you can go out there and probably play right away. Well, you're not going to get coached like you can go get coached here. So I think that there's something to Kirby Smart in this whole USC thing, like Brian mentioned. I think you're onto something, because it's an easy negative, quote unquote, negative recruiting when you say, hey man, you're not gonna get coached when you go out there. You can probably gonna be the same type of player when you first step on campus when you leave, if you go to the NFL draft.
Yeah. Kirby's so competitive with this stuff, and I think that he whether it's him creating it or kind of mutually a little bit, there's been coaches that he's had rivalries with, or coaches that he may not view of like, you're that guy, you're on this level. Like you go back to like Gus Malzahn or whatever. He'd love to rub it in Gus Malzahn's face there at Auburn when he got an opportunity to run up the score. He didn't think he was on the same level in terms of that. And I think he views Lincoln Riley in that way. Like, oh, you guys got some good things going on out there. Yeah, you may have had the number one overall pick in quarterback, and you got some nice offensive pieces, but you don't play like grown-up big boy football on defense. Like, I think that really drives Kirby to be like, come over here. This is the varsity. This is JV. If you want to go do that, that's fine. But and I think that stuff like that is what helps keep him going and keep him competitive on a daily basis. All right, I'm going to beat Lincoln Riley this week. I'm going to challenge my players to beat them. we're going to challenge this. And he's always got to put something in front of himself too, in addition to all the other duties he has coaching. He wants to beat whoever he's competing with and whatever that might be.
Yeah, and I think that trickles down all the way through that coaching staff, right? Because, I think you make a great point. We were talking about the feather in the cap and how good it's going to look down the road, not just to get an Isaiah Gibson, but also a Dontrell Glover, and if you get a Justice Terry as well. But every time you do that, that's also one more opportunity for you to stick it to the other coach and be able to subtly tell recruits, or not so subtly tell recruits, hey, I got this guy. We got this guy outright. This guy decommitted from that program and came over to us. Or this guy came through the transfer portal and look what happened with his career. There are just so many. These are just like stacks, right? He's just continuing to stack on reasons for the top talent in this country to make their way to Athens. So once again, overall, a good weekend for the Dogs program. And like we said, we're just talking about these two as we're recording. It'll be interesting to see how things play out as the day, if not the week, goes by as well. Now, there's a case to be made that it'll be just as good for the Dogs in Austin, Tuscaloosa, and Oxford as it is in Athens. We'll go between the hedges to discuss. This episode of the Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. So the time has come where the playoffs have pretty much wound down, whether it is the College World Series, whether it's the Stanley Cup Final or the NBA Finals. But hey, if you love sports and you love them as much as I do, you never kind of want them to stop. And although we get fewer games in those sports, but now the WNBA is ratcheting up, Major League Baseball is ratcheting up, there are still some things out there that we can watch, some sporting events that we can watch and enjoy and make bets on. FanDuel lets all of us keep the sports going whenever we want. And all we have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime we're in the mood. So this is summer. FanDuel is now hooking you guys up with a little bit of summer fun where all customers with a boost or a bonus, you can get that daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to make the most out of summer. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, guys, we are just 9 Saturdays away from the start of the college football season. Woo, woo. And the closer we get, the more the betting lines change for Georgia, speaking of betting lines. So updated point spreads now have the Dogs favored in road games against Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss. But Brian, why do you think this line has actually changed suddenly? Because, a few weeks ago, just maybe 3 weeks ago, we were having conversations about many pundits and many sites saying that, hey, 1, 2, if not 3 of those games could potentially be lost by the Dogs.
Yeah. So what happened is a lot of these lines came out once we got all the official times and everything, when those schedules got shored up a little bit. And then what happened is all the big money, all the sharp money went and bet on what they know. They went and bet on Georgia. That's the brand that they see now. That's the Alabama from a couple years ago. That's the Cowboys on Sunday afternoon so Georgia's now in that public eye of a lot of times their lines are skewed to a certain way. And some of the people just go ahead and bet on it. And some people like to bet in advance on things, thinking that they're going to get a benefit or a change. So this was real money going on Georgia that then wound up swinging the line. So we're talking about, probably several $1 million that wound up swinging this thing, which happens to wind up moving the line. It is crazy that they're favored everywhere. The one at Texas is interesting to me that they're favored on the road there. I'll be interested to see as the season goes along, and that game being in mid-October, what some of the scores are in the first couple weeks between those two teams, if they wind up being favored in that spot. This is just because Georgia's become that team where, like, okay, I'm betting on college football. I want to put some money out there. Let me go ahead and get out in front on Georgia. So,
yeah.
And I think that just from a football standpoint, Georgia's just better than all those teams. There's one argument to be made. Alabama going on the road. You got Jalen Milroe returning. He actually beat them last year in the SEC championship. So you kind of understand that aspect of it, right? So That's the only one that I can probably say, oh, it could be a toss-up, depending on what, who's healthy and what's going on leading into that game. So, but I still do feel that Georgia is better than Alabama. But that as far as that one goes, that's the only one that I see that could potentially be a problem for the Dogs, because I don't see Texas having enough to be able to get the job done, and I definitely don't see Ole Miss having enough to get the job done, because everybody coming in with Lane Kiffin, a Lane Kiffin coach team is always going to have hype coming to the season, and then at the end of the year they're going to be like, oh man, Lane had a okay season. Yeah, that's what he does. He's an okay coach, so he's going to have an okay season.
Yes.
That happens all the time with him. Yeah.
Right. It's that every time. Oh, Lane Kiffin, they're going to get it done this year. No, it's going to be average, just like he's always been.
Right. And hey, it proved its point last year, right? Where everyone was saying, oh my God, the Ole Miss game, that's going to be a tough one for Georgia, if you will. And all of a sudden, 52-17 happened, right?
And it happened quick too, T. It was one of those, like, we were in the middle of the second quarter. This is a wrap. That was actually, I had just gotten back in town from living out on the West Coast. Haven't been to a game in Athens. Let's circle it. Ole Miss, I'm going to go. Oh, this is a wrap. Like, just so early on in that game too, the build up and the hype and everything. I wanted to circle back around one thing with Jalen Milroe that Jarvis had said, and I apologize. I actually meant to send this to you guys the other day. I'm not sure if you saw the comments that leaked out about Jalen Milroe and what he said in that SEC championship about
show.
That game.
Yeah.
Just in terms of them, he said that Georgia had kind of worn down, didn't look like they want to be there for 4 quarters. I'm paraphrasing. This isn't a direct quote on the spot. So everybody right away is like, oh, this is going to be the bulletin board material. And it probably will be. You can't, you don't want to say stuff like that. I'm curious to know how this would have been handled if Saban was still the head coach, or if Jalen Milroe would have even said this if Nick Saban was still the head coach. So if you get an opportunity after you check out this podcast, Google that, look at the comments of it, because that is going to be big heading into that game. It being a night game, Georgia, Bama, all the history of it. That thing's going to be played up big time heading into that game in Tuscaloosa.
Brian, he wouldn't have been doing the interview if Nick Saban was there.
Right? I know. It's a new world. Oh,
what?
Crazy.
Oh
wait,
my
I
gosh.
just saw. Bama player said something that's already we're already in a different time. We're already in a different day and age.
Yes.
Nick's been gone for years now if this is already happening. So
it's a new dawn, a new day, baby.
Yeah.
Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. And I was just thinking as well, not only bulletin board material at the beginning or right now, Brian, but after this game, or probably during and then after the game, there'll be milk box material, in the words of one Notorious B.I.G., because I feel like they're on a mission to make them disappear and make them understand you are not on our level. You are not. Okay, Jarvis, who am I referencing there? Can't get on my level.
Get on my level.
Wiz Khalifa?
Oh gosh. Oh, that's one. Yeah, that's one. If you're talking about an Atlanta artist, Atlanta group, excuse me.
You can never
get on my level. Little Scrap in them. Yeah. Those people. Yeah, them.
You can see the Atlanta Football Party Dogs edition. We're music connoisseurs, but we're not exactly music geniuses when it comes to being able to recall things in the musical era. But you know what we meant. Anyway, exactly. ESPN.com had an article that basically said, since the new college football playoff format will guarantee playoff spots for the 5 highest ranked conference champions, they wanted to pose 5 questions to the college football playoff committee. So what I'm going to do is give you guys those 5 questions, and you can ask me if you want, again, because I know it's a lot of information, but you tell me which one is the most intriguing to you, because I know for me, when I read the 5 questions, I didn't think they were all 5 were intriguing, but there were some questions that they posed that I thought were food for thought. So here we go. So BG, we'll start with, actually, I'll let you guys chime in. BG, you want to jump in? JD, you want to jump in? I'll give you the 5. 1, will strength of schedule evaluations change with conference realignment? 2, how many times from the SEC and Big Ten teams will fill the bracket from the SEC and Big Ten? 3, how difficult will it be to rank the number 8 and number 9 teams with the number 1 team looming? 4, will the criteria be ranking the top group of 5 champion? And last but not least, how will the playoff path change for independents?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to say it's the playoff path and how it changes for independents, because that's kind of the most interesting storyline to me in terms of expanding it. Okay, how do we get your Boise State type teams in there, things like that. When they make your Tulanes who have been good in recent years, because those matchups are going to be really intriguing to me in the first round, and where they actually put them. And I think, to cheat the answer a little bit too as well, it's kind of like, all right, what's the criteria to get in? So it's sort of those last two questions, because we can't change it every year like we did for the group of four, or when it was down to the 4 playoffs. Like, what is the criteria? You got to stick to that, because now we got 12, because it's going to be the Wild West, even more so if you're picking from a group of 20 or 25 teams and you're changing the criteria every year to however you want to do it. So you really got to have it, stick with it, and then, okay, how do these smaller teams actually get in? What is their angle? What is their path?
And for me, it's going to be the Big Ten SEC college football playoff. You want to know how many teams are going to be there? A lot. It's going to be a lot of teams for the Big Ten and SEC, because those were a lot of the better teams are. You got USC and UCLA moving on over. So I think when you have those type of parameters, and having this big super conference, specifically talking about the SEC, with adding Texas and Oklahoma, those are some of the things that you just have to pay attention to, because that's where all the attention goes. We talking about big money schools and stuff like that, and they being added to the best conference in the college football in the country. Yeah, it's going to have a lot of those teams in there. So that's the big thing that stands out to me.
And to me, I will say it's the strength of schedule evaluations, and will they change with conference realignment? I don't know that it's more about the conference realignment part than it is the strength of schedule. I felt like that was one of those criterion that the college football playoff committee, to me, could never really qualify. I just felt like every time that conversation was had, after they decided who was going to get into the 14 playoff, except when it was an obvious year, right? It just always seemed inconsistent. And strength of schedule also went back to, okay, well, if that team beat that team, but they lost to that team, how'd they get in? So to me, that was always one of those where it just seemed to be like this moving target. So I'm hopeful that maybe they'll stick to that. They'll maybe further define strength of schedule for themselves. And then maybe as a complement to that, when you look at a Texas and an Oklahoma now being in the SEC, the conference realignment may actually help them to determine what strength of schedule actually looks like, because maybe you'll have some of those power teams that have now shifted over into different conferences. I don't know, somehow maybe the realignment may help them. But for me, it's more about them always being inconsistent when it came to the explanation of strength of schedule. Now, the Dogs, they always do good things. They did something really, really cool last weekend that we'll talk about in Next Up. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. That's the formula for winning championships. And it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. And we know that this Georgia Bulldogs team has the passion, obviously the drive, and the patience to see this thing through in hopes of getting back into the championship ring at the end of this season. Well, eBay Motors, too, is a championship type operation. They have everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We're talking superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style. And for me, it was style, because that, of course, is where I was able to pick up some really nice seat covers for my car. So with over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride or die every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, it is about burning rubber, not cash. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make the car your MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. So, guys, it was another great weekend for the Dogs. We'll talk about that in a minute. But before we do, want to tell our viewers and our listeners about Locked On Sports Today. It is a free 24/7 sports streaming channel that's programmed for them every day to bring them the biggest stories without all the noise. So Locked On Sports Today brings can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on our YouTube channel or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Kirby had his players volunteer at Camp Sunshine Friday. And for those who aren't familiar with Camp Sunshine, it is a place where those young kids who have been diagnosed with cancer are able to go and just kind of really enjoy themselves and get away from the rigors of the treatment that they have to endure when they get that diagnosis. And Kirby Smart's brother had an early diagnosis. So this is a passion project for him, something that's near and dear to his heart. But when you look at the pictures, you see how some of the players embrace it so much. And of course, we're going to go with our Michael Williams moment, because he was one of the guys who really kind of was at the forefront of leading the charge of the Dogs really getting into that particular project and that particular outreach on Friday. But I just love it when we have a chance to talk about what these guys do both on and off the field.
Yeah, this is the really cool, thing about having 18 to 23-year-olds all together in one place, right? Because we understand what, how they move crowds and how, people want to be around them. I love the fact that Kirby Smart, takes that influence, that type of influence, that type of impression that they put on people and bring it to these kids, because we like having a cancer diagnosis, at that early of an age, I just couldn't imagine, because I have kids, and I just don't even want to think about, that particularly happening to my kids. So for them to be able to have that fortitude to be able to understand what they're going through and be able to go through it with the parents, and then to have somebody like Kirby saying, hey, you know what, I've been through this too, I understand. So I'm gonna have these guys come out here and hopefully brighten your day for a short period of time, and having a lasting impression on those kids as they go forward in life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a really nice tradition that the team's done for a long time. I know it's been tough since COVID, so I believe this is the first or the second time that they've been back with that. But it was always great to see these pictures from this, and it was cool to see the list of names of the players. You mentioned a couple of them there, but it was like the combination of some of the older guys, some of the younger guys. And I don't think they know what kind of impact they're even doing when they go there. They see it on their faces and everything, but that stays for that whole day and the weeks to come and everything. And just to have that, sign of hope. And when you get to the fall too, hey, you're watching the game. Oh, I met him. I got to hang out with Malachi Starks, and I got to hang out with CJ Allen. And so just connect like that and have that personal moment, and to be able to spend some time is really, really cool. So it was nice to see the team back out there.
Yeah, and there's nothing like hope when you're in those situations, and every little bit of hope counts. A lot of times you'll hear that from physicians and caregivers, like obviously medication, chemotherapy, radiation, whatever it is that you have to go through is critical, but also keeping your spirits up and staying optimistic about your prognosis. So yeah, all of those little points of light for those kids, it means everything. And like you said, if you look at the end of the season, as we hope that Georgia will be able to hoist the national championship trophy once again, imagine that kid, if he or she is on the other side of treatment, they're ringing the bell, and then they go back to school and they're like, everybody else is saying, oh yeah, we watched the game and we saw, Michael Williams just absolutely dominate. And that kid's like, oh yeah, I met Michael, back in, like that, being able to say what you did for summer, as opposed to that kid focusing on his or her health and what they did last summer. They get to talk about something like that. So yeah, I think it's absolutely awesome for them to do, and absolutely be done and partnering with a cause that means something to Kirby, because I think that's the other piece. Seeing your leader have a commitment and a passion about it, it's authentic, it's genuine. It actually allows you to kind of buy into it, I believe, a little bit more easily as well. So as we wrap up, we always like to end on a high note. We ended on a high note with Camp Sunshine. Also want to end on a high note because with Charlie Condon, of course, he led the Dogs as deep as they've gone since 2008, as far as potentially getting to the College World Series. They fell just short, but what he was able to do in leading the nation in batting average, slugging percentage, wins above replacement, etc., he becomes the first player in Georgia baseball history, BG, to win the prestigious Golden Spikes Award, which he was bestowed that honor this past Saturday.
Yeah, it's been awesome to see award after award after award for him. And now what you get to at the end of this, assuming he is the number one pick, now you get to go to Cleveland. So good luck with that, in terms of living there. No, I'm just messing with it. No, it is one of those things where
I love the shots at Cleveland. Yeah, keep it coming.
And you get to work your way up. I don't even know what their minor league affiliates are. They probably aren't in the best spots.
Doesn't matter.
So, sorry, the Guardians are catching strays right now. But no, it's great to see him awarded. And it's just each award that he brings. Okay, you can throw it up. You put it up in the athletic facilities. You can use it in recruiting. And this will be a season that Georgia fans and Georgia baseball fans will remember forever. And hopefully they're able to, really carry this momentum and build it into something else. Because we've talked about it a good bit. The baseball program has never quite gotten there. I was actually on campus in 2008 when they made on this run. And I went to some games here and there, but it still wasn't a huge thing. And I hope it just becomes a thing moving forward where it's okay, yeah, the football players on top of the indoor facility, watching Foley Field up top, and it's this whole scene. If they can have more moments like that, I think it'd be great for the whole athletic department.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cool thing about I'm just fascinated by the journey of Condon, right? You're talking about being a walk-on to potentially being the number one overall pick in the MLB draft. That is, man. Whew. Yeah, man. Shout out to him, man. It don't matter what. Y'all can be playing in Anchorage, Alaska, and I wouldn't care because, you think about what he's gone through and the level of commitment that he had to have to be able to get to this place. Yeah, right. It wouldn't even matter to me, but it is funny that, he's going to Cleveland.
Yeah. That's the reward you get for being the best in college baseball. But, the comment you make as well, BG, because honestly, it would be exciting because we talk about the fact that obviously the SEC is far and away the best football conference in the country, right? And low key, on the basketball side, especially women's basketball, they are the best conference in the country. So imagine that can happen in baseball. Well, it can, because the College World Series featured 2 SEC teams in Tennessee and Texas A&M that had to take it to a third and final game in order to decide the College World Series champion, which of course is Tennessee, and now Georgia's in that mix. So once again, it's just one of those things where SEC just has an embarrassment of riches, period. Anyway, we appreciate you guys for stopping by the Atlanta Football Party. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we're free and available wherever you download your podcasts. We'll see you on the Atlanta Sports Party come Thursday.